welcome to the Money Capital podcast. My name is Kaya Butelezi, your host. I'm a man of my word. I'm excited to bring you today an interesting guest, Quinton Zunga, the founder as well as the CEO of the RH Group of Companies. He's going to be telling us about his past 10 years since he started the company, but also we're going to be reflecting, looking at the milestones that he's been able to achieve over the past 10 years, the accomplishments, also the challenges in terms of starting the business from scratch and looking at where the business is currently at. Yeah, Quinton, I think over to you. Maybe because we zoom in into our conversation, we can just start talking about Quinton, the person yourself, and tell us more about who you are, where you grow up, and what is your interest really in investments as well as in the healthcare in general.
Thank you, Kaya, and thank you to your listeners. It is indeed a very big delight to have to speak to you about the past 10 years and more. I'm Quinton Zunga, historically a investment banker. Been trained as an investment banker for over 14 years, working for Barclays, Absa Capital, Merryll Lynch, Bank of America. And over that time, one gets to understand the movement of capital, the interests of investors, and the opportunities in the market. So prior to starting RH Managers and RH Group, I was basically in the investment banking space. And prior to that, I was, of course, still a student. Did my University of Zimbabwe as well as University of London Masters in Finance, and then happened to go into investment banking, which was a natural progression of what I studied. And at that time, I was basically in charge of debt capital markets, and this is really debt financing for corporates and sovereigns. Got involved in a lot of interesting financing structures for the government of South Africa, for city of Johannesburg, for companies, for Barclays itself. So the journey was quite interesting. It gave me a good sense of some of the key fundamental cash flow movements in the country and in corporates, more specifically. And then in that period, I identified healthcare as an area that was significantly disjointed. And in that is the opportunity was nobody was happy. The private sector clients were complaining that their healthcare costs are too much. Public sector saying they are too overcrowded. So it's a market that was fragmented, an oligopolist market with a few parties who control the market, but the market doesn't seem to be gravitating to provide a kind of universal healthcare that's affordable to a majority of the people. So that led me to move into that sector post leaving investment banking and looking at how we can make a difference, how we can start to change. And we started the firm looking at the infrastructure component of how do we provide more affordable income infrastructure to the masses. And fast forward many moons later, we're here.
Yeah, excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you.
For 10 years. I think it has been quite an interesting journey. I think one would ask the question around, if you look at the black asset management landscape, it's a landscape that is, there's a lot of sameness. And however, what you do is very unique. Why specifically healthcare? I know that you identified an opportunity, and you want to make a difference, but was there anything else that really attracted you to the sector?
Yes, definitely. I think what the transition period for me from investment banking to healthcare was led by advising a client of ours who's Busamed in fundraising for their first hospital, which is Modderfontein and Paderfley in Cape Town. And in that process, one could identify the weaknesses in the market, in that the areas where the infrastructure is needed is not the area where the capital was going. As well as the investment community was not used to building new hospitals. The view was the incumbents had already got enough infrastructure in the urban areas, high income bracket areas, and then it leaves a lot more places to be underserved. So in supporting that company in building its portfolio, it became evident that you could actually get the investment committee to aggregate funds to do this on a more holistic fashion. And what we did there was try to convince a number of investment pension funds to provide us the capital to do this much more aggressively, because doing one hospital there and another hospital there wasn't going to make the impact that we wanted to. So we started our first fund in 2014, which ended up being 1.6 billion. And in that, we managed to develop about 11 hospitals from scratch, acquire some, and that led to the second fund, which is about 1.9 billion, and the listing of RH Pupilo. So we've been in the business of aggregating these pools of fund in order to zone in on the opportunity set in healthcare. The interesting part was obviously I wasn't a doctor, so everyone wants to sometimes mistakes me and calls me doc.
Yes, exactly.
But it was just looking at the market dynamics and realizing, okay, fine, this is a problem, and more so for black owned hospital, black entrepreneurs who wanted to go into healthcare. The funding mechanism was especially difficult, and there's a lot of licenses that the government was giving in order to incentivize black entrepreneurs into the space. But the first hurdle they'll face is the funding one, and that's where we fashioned our organization to support.
Excellent. You mentioned the listing of RH Bupilo. Tell us more about that, and what were you hoping by listing that vehicle, and also the difference between RH Bupilo as well as RH Managers, and what are the two entities hoping to achieve?
So RH Managers was set up to attract unlisted capital allocation. So we call it alternative investment. So within the framework of pension funds, the regulations for unlisted under the regulation 28 was expanding to say, pension fund can't just invest on the stock exchange. They need to start investing in the real economy and also bring up the infrastructure of the country. And that's where we set our first funds at. But we realized that just focusing on those investors only and that allocation was probably not enough. And we also realized that the scale typically tends to be for the listed companies in terms of more capital, more ability to grow. And we set up RH Pupilo to tap into the listed capital allocation from the investors. So we're looking at the allocation from unlisted and allocation from listed, and trying to provide an opportunity for both sides of the equation in order to get the infrastructure capital aggregated.
Okay, excellent. And what were some of the challenges that you were trying to address? Was, for instance, I know that liquidity for investors is one of the biggest challenges, especially in the private market space. With the listed vehicle, was that one of the challenges that you were trying to address?
Absolutely. So if you invest in the private markets, liquidity is very low. So the allocations for the private markets tends to be much smaller in terms of what the pension fund community is allowed to do. And the allocation for listed is much bigger because they're able to trade out of the position when they want to. So we needed to put a vehicle that would allow those investors that don't have the runway to be investing over a 10-year period want to invest but may want to exit earlier, and that's how the listed RH Pillow platform started. It started as a special acquisition vehicle, which SPAC, which there was a SPAC movement some time ago. We got 500 million, which we've grown to over 1.1 billion in that vehicle, and it is really a vehicle where investors can come in and come out, depending on the liquidity dynamics on the stock exchange.
Yeah. I read somewhere that in was it 2023, you recorded your first loss in that RH Bupilo. How did that come about, and how have you been able to navigate the market since then?
So that was really a product of COVID. Coming out of COVID, we needed to realign our investments. The last 2 years of COVID was really spent defending those assets because there were swings and troughs and peaks and high staff costs. I mean, at that time also diesel cost. So everything came into a very big pot during the times of very testing. So in that period, one wasn't looking at the maximization opportunity, was looking at the defensive opportunity, but it is very expensive. And that crystallized into our first and only loss in that vehicle. But I would say it was really after COVID when we really now normalized business. Obviously, we had to take the loss of what we had to spend during the time to keep the assets going.
You are known in the market as a disruptor. You want to take on the establishment. Looking back 10 years, do you think that you've achieved, you've really disrupted the market? And how's the next 10 years looking like in terms of taking on the establishment and really building this massive business, that is black owned as well as black managed?
So in the core vision of the company, not yet, which is providing affordable healthcare to the underserved areas. But in the subsector of providing infrastructure, we have been the most active developer of new facilities in the peri-urban and rural areas. We're talking of the Vryburg, Vryheid, Leboa-Khomo. We're talking of Stanger, KwaDukuza. We're talking of the smaller towns where we are the only hospital in the town. So we've been able to grow much more aggressively there. But we still are working on the mission to provide affordability, which is a task that really hinges on the market forces and market dynamics, which are not yet squarely in our favor, given that even though we've grown, we're still a minnow from a size perspective, given the size of the incumbents. So for us to drive the pricing dynamics, we need to have a bigger asset base to be able to kind of influence the pricing in the market towards affordability. And that's something that we're still working on. The journey is still going, and we're looking to continue on this route till we get it.
And how's the support from investors? I think you've raised about 5 billion so far across all your funds, and I think it's a portfolio of about 35 hospitals.
Correct.
Just tell us more about how you've been able to achieve all of this. And is generally the support, is it local investors or is it just across the board, including global investors?
So the support has been encouraging, but not where we want to end up. So 5 billion sounds like a lot, but if you're looking at the smallest listed group, it's 20 billion. If you look at the biggest hospital group, it's about 80 billion. So yes, we've had the support. We still need more. We've managed to be able to get over 23 investors into our portfolios, and that's a combination of the unlisted allocation and listed allocation. We've also managed to get international investors into our portfolio. 5 of them from General Electric, Siemens, NORSAD, African Development Bank. So we've been able to get foreign capital, but we still aspire to create an even bigger base. I think the opportunity is still there. The need is still there. And
Are you getting
definitely
any
we're still
support
challenged.
from the likes of GPF, PIC, ESCOM Pension Fund? Those
Yes.
are generally, your public sector funds have been supportive of black asset managers, but generally as well in terms of, investing in social as well as economic infrastructure.
Yes, the PIC more specifically, they incubated our first and second fund, and the listed fund. So they've been a bigger supporter of this platform, because obviously they do cover a significant portion of the government employees who are spread all over the country and who face the healthcare dilemma that we're mentioning in terms of access and affordability. So they were very big sponsor. Obviously, they incubated us, and obviously the next step was for us to, and the next step is for us to crowd in other investors, which on the main we have done. Looking forward, we're trying to do our Fund 3, and with that we are trying to get in even more investors into the platform. And our view is that we've got a lot of support from the quasi-sovereign pension funds. The conventional investment pension funds, we still have some way to go. They're still not as excited about healthcare. I think there's so many other things going on, NHI,
Yes.
and they're making big moves there. But we fundamentally feel that to get a thriving economy, you've got to have a healthy economy. So we're still engaging with them to support the cause more aggressively. As we saw in COVID, when something breaks there, all the economics also starts to crumble. So we think the thesis and the motivation should be there, but obviously it's a long game. And generally some have the wherewithal to stay the course, some don't have that same time horizon, but it's still something that we think will aggregate more of them.
Your views on universal healthcare access, its importance in South Africa, number one, but number two, and how NHI is going to facilitate that. I know that currently there's a lot of debate about NHI. The private sector, for instance, they've even threatened that they are willing to go all the way up to the Concord to challenge the NHI, which I think was passed by the president last year. What is the stance of your stance as well as the stance of the RH Group in terms of NHI?
So I think coming firstly from universal healthcare, we think it is an imperative. I think as we progress in this democracy, it's getting more and more clear that a lot of the majority of people are getting excluded from quality, affordable healthcare, and are dependent on the state, which is overstretched, and a lot of their facilities were not meant to support 80% of the population when it was built. So we think universal healthcare as a principle is a national recognition that we need to be able to provide healthcare for the general population in a reasonable fashion, access and affordability. So that concept for us is something that I think the market generally is agreeable to. Obviously, then it goes on to the next step with how.
Yes.
That's where things start to fall apart, and the government's proposition is to put a national health insurance, which would make everyone able to afford or at least access healthcare in a reasonable way. Very controversial debate. We are pro NHI because we think it will level out the playing field. It will effectively make everyone a customer.
Yes.
So with infrastructure, you'll be like, I don't have to now just speak to this medical aid on this subset of people. Anyone who needs healthcare who's out there has the backing of NHI to access our facilities. But from there stems more controversy around how does it funded? Does it exclude the medical aid fraternity? And by and large, that's where the contestation is, because it's trying to change an equilibrium which is working for some and not working for others, but needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And I do think we need to see how it plays out. We are ready to support the NHI with the infrastructure we've built, but the whole market has to aggregate on the funding and pricing models.
If you were to have an opportunity to have coffee with the CEO of Discovery, Adrian Gore, and iron out the sticking points in terms of the next phase for the implementation of NHI, what would you say to him in terms of ironing out those sticking points and indeed moving forward as a nation?
I think I would say, look, I think they need to give NHI a lot more support. Obviously, it impacts the medical aid funders' business more dramatically than infrastructure. Infrastructure is available to NHI patients or any patients. But if you're a funder, I think the current legislation excludes them covering, a certain number of disciplines, which effectively reduces their business case dramatically. But I would want to think that whatever is left should still be able to make a business case. And secondly, I would like to say that I think a government-led initiative is still feasible even in the current dispensation. We have the likes of GEMS, which is a medical scheme for government employees, which has worked wonderfully. We have parliamentary medical aid, we have police medical. So the notion that a public sector led initiative is totally going to fail is not anecdotally where the evidence is. I think the key thing is how does the private sector participate, because there are other opportunities that come out from an NHI model. For instance, managing the system, supporting what is not covered, as well as looking at bespoke offerings for specific individual. And I think that's what we would want to say, is that they should also be strong proponents. I mean, they haven't said they're opponents. I guess it's you have to read in between the lines to say where exactly they stand. But I think their market scale, and if they were to use that to try and drive an NHI agenda, would be quite positive.
Yeah, the transformation. I know that is a controversial topic in financial services. It still lags other industries in South Africa. What is your view in terms of what needs to be done to fast track the participation of the broader players in the industry, but also in ensuring that in terms of assets under management, that also increases, versus, what the establishment currently has.
Look, that's the challenges we are currently trying to overcome. There's still quite a high skepticism of black fund managers. Black fund managers still quite low in the overall allocations of the investment pool in the country, and it is something that needs to change and needs to be supported more. I would like to say that the market has increased in the black fund managers' participation, but if you look at it, you're looking almost like 10% of allocation. So there's still quite a lot of to do. I do think, in our instances, we also didn't find that red carpet where we're black owned. Can we get all the support? There's a lot of resistance, and I think what the market needs to do is a lot more education and a lot more incentive to get those allocators to change the paradigm, because as they broaden the manager pool, they increase the skills level, the knowledge base, the activity in the market, because a lot of people are looking at things in a different way. So it is quite a battle. I think the rules around that need some refreshing, more so for the listed side, where we're small cap, and you can find a black fund manager also not able to invest even with the intent, because the rules they get the funds tend to force them investing, like the JSE top 40 large scale with big liquidity, and that is where the challenge is. So if you look at the black fund managers, other than the listers, they're managing small amounts. More so the black unlisted fund managers, they're really in the peripheral of this economic proposition. And I think we need to continue advocating and lobbying for that to change over time.
Yeah, there is also talk of consolidation. There's just far too many of black players in the market. So now the view that in order for these entities to scale, there must be consolidation. What is your view, on that?
Look, I think it is valid to a certain extent, but I think it should not be used as excuse to allocate low. Look, if you have 100 million there, 100 million there, the 10 of you can come and make $1 billion, but still, how about you have 10 billion each, and the 10 of you come and make 100 billion? 100 billion. So I still think there are two matters here. One being there's still not enough allocation. Even if you aggregate, right now I'm saying about 10% of the market, we're still talking about 10%. Why are we not aggregating when we have 50% of the allocation? Yeah. Because then, the easy way out is to say, look, you're not big because you're not aggregating, but we're aggregating from a small pool. So that in itself leads that as a scapegoat to lower allocation, which I understand. I mean, they need bigger players, and it's much easier to give a big fund managers with big teams and big resources. But it's a journey, and the journey should start by creating big players in the main and allowing them to merge as they go forward. Our view is that you also don't want a unitary view on matters. So the more fragmented you are, the more voices can speak if they had sufficient capital. Otherwise, we all look at one agenda and say, okay, this is the agenda. But as we've seen in investment, you look at an investment this way, somebody's going to look at a different angle and make sense that you wouldn't have thought of, because it's just how information is disseminated. So yes, aggregation is a path but I think it's superseded by bigger allocation to the managers. That's what we need to see.
Great stuff. I think you are a leader. Obviously, no one would be able to build the kind of business we've been able to build over the years without being a strong leader. So, what drives you as a leader? What values and principles that drive you on a daily basis to be able to build this business, and also just generally as a person going forward? What are those values that ground you as a person and drive you on a daily basis?
So I think the first thing is in life you have to find your space. The things that you can do good enough, better than other people in general. And I think a lot of people spend their lives looking for it. And it's a frustrating exercise. So in this sector, I think despite the challenges, we've found our own niche that we do something that's very unique and other people generally don't do for various reasons. And we built hospitals from scratch, which was not a God-given skill. It was a journey of trial and error and of aspiration and need to get things done. So for us, what drives me is being in a place where I know I can do it, and we can make impact. And with that motivates you. Said, okay, now I can see some of the things I can change, and I want to do it better and be more impactful to the economy. And as people reflect legacy, they'll say, look, somebody was able to change this dispensation and get things to work. So we're not kind of like the Elon Musk thematic of going to Mars. We're saying, okay, fine. Before we take on the other Mars-like agendas, let's get some problems fixed. The other thing that's motivating is solving problems. I think by the main, a lot of people know what the problems are. I mean, you can start with any kind of market or country problem and say this problem. So the problems are quite distinctly obvious, but the solutions are quite distinctly absent. So if you find yourself solving world problems, the motivation is great. I mean, when we built our first hospital, the excitement was very high because we could find like, wow, this wasn't there. You see patients coming, babies being born, and like, we've done something. We've changed something. I mean, in some areas they had been wanting hospital for decades, and now it is there. And bringing in the banks and convincing them and getting all of that piece together, it's quite a marvel, and very exciting, and it drives you to want to do more, and want to be able to make more changes in the country.
What gets you most excited about some of the assets in your portfolio? And also, what is exciting about the next 10 years of the RH Group?
So what gets me excited is that we still believe there is a future in this pathway, because the issues that we started are improving but haven't been solved. And what is more exciting is that it's getting to be a much more topical issue in the country. No one is just ignoring that healthcare matters and health to the population is important. Everyone is realizing, we have issues to deal with healthcare. I think anyone who's used public sector would be able to tell you. Anyone who uses private sector, he will be able to tell you, like, wow, there is no bed of roses either side. So for us, the future of chipping away that problem excites us a lot. Like, okay, we'll chip away. Every stakeholder gets convinced that there is work to do. We believe, like, in the current dispensation, public healthcare is not sustainable. But more so, we believe private healthcare is not sustainable. Last year, we got private healthcare increases on medical aids of 10%. That's far higher than inflation, which means that pace, if we keep going, you're getting poorer. You're buying less healthcare, and at some inflection point, everyone needs to say, look, we need to do something about it. This is not can't go on forever.
Yes,
And
yes.
we think we are positioning ourselves to the point where alternatives are the mainstay. And it's like with any economy, we've seen it in electricity. The pressure point comes to a point where alternatives are. Before you couldn't generate your own electricity. Now, now there's so many IPPs because everyone could see the problems. The solutions were not embedded, but now they had to come, and those who were ready definitely reap the economic benefits of it.
As a leader, I don't think I'm going to leave this interview without asking you this question. Since I think the elections last year, we've seen that we have a different type and configuration of government, which is called the government of national unity. Going forward, and in the next 10 years of the RH group, what is your view of the NGU? Do you see it being sustainable? Do you see coalitions as the future of this country? And what does that present to you as a business?
So for us, the key thing around the political landscape is stability first. The stability is that because we at least know what we're dealing with. If it's not stable, you don't know what you're dealing. So even trying to find solutions is tough. Following stability is some sort of unitary vision, and unfortunately, we have to rely on the politicians, the government, to paint that unitary vision because that's where all the market players can feed into. So the GNU has been good for stability, but obviously it's still pulling relatively in different directions in certain aspects of what they need to accomplish. And
NHI being one.
Being one, definitely. Definitely. So we need an aggregation of the country needs to go this way, and everyone say, okay, let's support that agenda and stop bickering at every turn because time is of the essence. Opportunities of the essence. The world is not waiting for us to agree on things. They are going. The country should be focused on much more aggressive goals than solving basic healthcare. I mean, you got a very competitive international landscape where different countries are positioning themselves for the future, but it's only made possible if you're tackling the basics yourself. So if we spend so much time fighting on a basic level around just providing healthcare, it leaves a lot of resources and time consumed. Whilst we could say, look, let's make South Africa the biggest producer of electric vehicles. I mean, it's if you kind of want to go there, everyone says, well, wait a minute, we haven't even finished this, where we are. So GNU has been surprisingly stable. We need more unitary views. We need compromise. I think stalemate is a problem where if we don't agree, then we're just going to fight forever. I think you don't agree on this, I concede. I don't agree on this, I concede. But once we come out of there is unison because we have to work as a collective to get things done and then also join the international competitiveness for other things that the other countries are looking at. So building that model, which has been slightly lacking in terms of that unitary purpose, is where we need to see them, although we do want to say, look, the stability has been very good.
We saw as a parting shot that Dr. Aaron Motsoaledi, the health minister, was addressed, was your keynote speaker at your 10th year anniversary last year. What is your relationship like with government? Do you think that is something very important for a private entity to have a strong relationship with government?
I think so, especially in our field, which is very heavily regulated. So one needs to be able to engage and be at the table when the matters are being discussed. So we take our government relationships very, very serious. But it's in healthcare, it's actually not that simple, because the sphere of what the minister and the National Department of Health controls is not as extensive as everyone thinks, right? Because he's in charge of certain aspects of healthcare, but the province are also in charge of certain healthcare aspects, and one finds yourself with different playing fields depending which province you're in, if it falls out of a national agenda. And that's something perhaps that needs to be looked at, because at this stage it doesn't go forth if the national department says do this, the province will do it. They feel they're entitled to allocate and work on their healthcare agendas in their own way. So you got different quality, different intervention, different funding of each province, and very big difference. So one province could be doing better, the other one is completely nowhere, and that needs to also fall into the national vision where everybody's working to one agenda, and we are busy trying to fix the same agenda as opposed to contradicting issues.
Parting shot, your lesson and message to other entrepreneurs, to other players in the financial services sector?
I think my message is don't give up. It sounds very cliche, like
Yeah.
but I think if you fail, look for another way to do it, and keep looking, because the ideology needs to be: is there something to fix? Right. If there's something to fix, I think you've got something that you can wake up every day to pursue. And knowing also that there is no red carpet going to be laid out for anybody. No matter how good you are, how well you understand the environment, the dynamics, you are going to find that you're going to have to push and push and push, keep singing the agenda, pivot the agenda, change with market dynamics, but you still have the goal in mind. And disappointment should not lead to disillusionment, because it is a tough world. It's not giving. It's for anybody. But if you stay on course and you are able to survive the loops, I think you've got a space within the environment to get there. And it's tough. It's tough. I think being an entrepreneur, you've got no fallback position. You're either going to have to crack it, or you are just also going to suffer. But we've seen people who have pursued very long-term agenda, and one never thought that would happen. And like Nelson Mandela said, it always looks impossible until it's done. Like, wow, they've done it.
Yes.
Like, I never thought they'll get there, but they had to have serious perseverance, and we think that's the same course we should also inspire other entrepreneurs to pursue.
Great stuff. I think that's where to leave it.
Thank you very much.
for your time,
Thank
sir.
you. That was great.
Quinton Zunga, the CEO and founder of the RH Group of Companies. And thanks for watching. Catch us next time. Join us on the Money Capital podcast, the voice of the financial services in South Africa. Don't forget to subscribe. Follow us on all our social media platforms. We look forward to joining you again next time. We'll be bringing you big names as promised. We'll be bringing you very interesting and empowering conversations. Thank you.